The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while Gregory Cheney was reviewing architectural blueprints for a sustainable housing project in Portland. The number was unlisted, but something made him answer. "Greg." The voice was older, strained. "It's Alma Clark, Sonia's mother." Gregory's pencil stopped mid-stroke. He hadn't heard that voice in 6 years. "What do you want?" "It's Jake, your son." She paused, and he could hear her breathing. "He has leukemia. Advanced stage. He needs a bone marrow transplant." The blueprints blurred before him. Jake, his little boy who'd be 12 now. The last time Gregory saw him, Jake had been 6 years old, crying in a courtroom as a judge, Judge Vernon Townsend, ruled that Gregory was an unfit parent and awarded full custody to Sonia with no visitation rights. "We've tested everyone," Alma continued, her voice breaking. "Victor, Sonia, her sister, cousins, everyone. No one's a match. The doctors say a parent has the best chance." Victor. The name alone made Gregory's jaw clench. Victor Howard, his former father-in-law, who'd smiled at him in that courtroom 6 years ago with cold triumph in his eyes. "Please," Alma said. "I know what happened was wrong. But he's dying, Greg. He's just a child." Gregory stared out his window at the Portland skyline, rain streaking the glass. He'd rebuilt his life here after losing everything in Sacramento. New city, new career, new identity in some ways. He'd become someone else, someone who didn't think about the son he'd lost, the wife who'd betrayed him, the corrupt system that had destroyed his family. "Which hospital?" he asked quietly. "Sacramento Memorial. The transplant coordinator is Dr. Rita Franco. I'll tell her you're coming." Alma's relief was palpable. "Thank you. Thank you so much." After she hung up, Gregory sat in silence. The memories came flooding back. Memories he'd spent 6 years suppressing. He'd met Sonia Howard at a charity gala in Sacramento 13 years ago. She'd been 24, beautiful, with auburn hair and a laugh that made him feel alive. He was 27, working as a junior architect at a prestigious firm, ambitious and idealistic. They married within a year, and Jake was born 2 years later. Gregory hadn't realized he was marrying into corruption until it was too late. Victor Howard owned Howard Industries, a pharmaceutical distribution company that supplied hospitals across California. On paper, it was legitimate, but Gregory had started noticing things: hushed phone calls, suspicious meetings, tension whenever he asked too many questions. Sonia had begged him not to pry into her father's business. "He's just particular about his work," she'd said. "You know how successful men are." But Gregory couldn't ignore what he saw. When Jake was 4, Gregory accidentally witnessed a conversation between Victor and several men in suits. They were discussing inventory discrepancies and off-book shipments. He heard mentions of hospitals in Mexico, cash payments, altered manifests. He tried to be discreet, but Victor had noticed his attention. The next day, Victor invited him to lunch. "You're a smart man, Gregory," Victor had said, cutting into a steak with surgical precision. "Smart enough to know that some things are better left alone. You have a beautiful family, a promising career. Wouldn't want anything to jeopardize that." The threat had been clear. Gregory had kept quiet, but the marriage began to fracture. Sonia sided with her father. She accused Gregory of being paranoid, jealous of Victor's success, trying to cause trouble. Their arguments escalated. Gregory suggested they move to another city, get distance from her family. Sonia refused. Then one night, Jake had a fever. Gregory gave him children's medication from the bathroom cabinet, medication that had been a sample from one of Victor's distribution channels. Within hours, Jake was vomiting, convulsing. They rushed him to the emergency room. The medication had been counterfeit, diluted, nearly killed his son. Gregory knew. Victor's company had been distributing fake pharmaceuticals, probably for years, pocketing the difference. And he nearly murdered his own grandson through his greed. Gregory went to the police the next day. He had documentation, photos, recordings. He told them everything. 2 days later, he was arrested for domestic violence. Sonia had bruises on her arms, a split lip. She claimed Gregory had attacked her in a rage, that he'd been abusive for years, that she feared for Jake's safety. It was all lies. Victor had orchestrated everything. Sonia had been coached or coerced, or maybe she'd always been her father's daughter and Gregory had been too blind to see it. The trial was a nightmare. Judge Townsend, who Gregory later learned had been on Victor's payroll for years, ignored every piece of evidence Gregory's lawyer presented. Character witnesses were discredited. Police reports from Gregory's complaint about the pharmaceuticals mysteriously disappeared. His own attorney seemed half-hearted, overwhelmed. Victor had sat in the back of the courtroom every day, watching with those cold blue eyes. Gregory lost custody, lost his son, lost everything. Sonia was awarded the house, full parental rights, and a restraining order that kept Gregory 500 feet away at all times. He wasn't even allowed to call. "You'll never see him again," Victor had told him in the courthouse hallway after the verdict, his voice low enough that only Gregory could hear. "That's what happens when you threaten my family. You forget what you think you know, you disappear, and maybe I let you live quietly somewhere." Gregory had wanted to kill him right there. His hands had curled into fists, his vision tunneling. But two of Victor's security team had materialized from the crowd, and Gregory knew he was beaten. He'd left Sacramento that night, drove to Portland, where an old college friend helped him find work. He buried himself in architecture, in creating something good and clean and honest. He changed his appearance, grew a beard, wore glasses, lost 20 pounds. He was still Gregory Chaney on paper, but he'd become someone else in practice. And he never stopped thinking about Jake. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone. He'd sent cards through a P.O. box, though he didn't know if they ever reached his son. He'd put money into a trust account Jake could access at 18. He'd done what little he could from a distance. Now Jake was dying, and Victor's money couldn't save him. Gregory booked a flight for the next morning. He packed a small bag, settled his current projects, and called his boss to explain he'd need indefinite leave for a family emergency. That night, he lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the boy he'd lost and the man who'd stolen him. The flight to Sacramento was turbulent. Gregory stared out the window at storm clouds, remembering Jake's face. Did his son even remember him? Sonia had probably poisoned him against Gregory for years, told him his father was dangerous, abusive, someone to fear rather than love. But none of that mattered now. Jake needed him. Gregory would give his bone marrow, maybe save his son's life, and then disappear again. He harbored no illusions about reconciliation. Victor would make sure of that. Sacramento Airport looked the same. Gregory rented a car and drove through familiar streets, past the house where he'd lived with Sonia, past the courthouse where his life had ended. The city felt like a ghost town of his former self. Sacramento Memorial was a sprawling complex on the north side. Gregory parked in the visitor lot, his heart hammering. He made his way to the transplant center, gave his name at the desk. A nurse, her badge read L. Parsons, led him to a consultation room where Dr. Rita Franco was waiting. Dr. Franco was in her 40s, efficient and compassionate in equal measure. "Mr. Chaney, thank you for coming. I know this situation is complicated." "How's Jake?" Gregory asked. "He's stable for now, but his condition is deteriorating. Without a transplant soon." She didn't finish the sentence. "We'll need to run tests to see if you're a match. Blood work, tissue typing. If you are compatible, the procedure itself isn't complicated, but recovery takes a few days." "When do we start?" "Right now, if you're ready." Gregory rolled up his sleeve. The blood draw took 15 minutes. Dr. Franco explained the laboratory would expedite the analysis, results within 6 hours. Gregory sat in the waiting area, surrounded by families dealing with their own crises. He wondered if any of them were running from men like Victor Howard. Around 8 p.m., Dr. Franco returned. "You're a match. An excellent match, actually. We can schedule the harvest procedure for tomorrow morning." "Can I see him?" "Jake." Dr. Franco hesitated. His mother specifically requested no contact. "I'm sorry." Of course she had. Gregory nodded. "Tomorrow morning, then?" He found a hotel near the hospital, couldn't eat dinner, couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Jake as a toddler, learning to walk, laughing as Gregory lifted him into the air. He thought about the last time he'd held his son, in that courtroom, while Sonia and Victor watched with expressions of manufactured concern. Tomorrow he'd save Jake's life. Then he'd leave, and Jake might never know his real father had been the one to rescue him. At 6 a.m., Gregory returned to the hospital. The pre-op procedures were mechanical, consent forms, anesthesia consultation, changing into a surgical gown. They wheeled him to an operating room where Dr. Franco and her team were waiting. "This will take about 2 hours," she explained. "We'll harvest bone marrow from your pelvic bone. You'll be under general anesthesia. When you wake up, you'll be sore, but it's manageable." Gregory nodded. The anesthesiologist placed a mask over his face, told him to count backward from 10. He made it to 7 before darkness claimed him. He woke in recovery, groggy and aching. A nurse, different from before, younger, with kind eyes, was checking his vitals. Her badge read Lindsay Parsons. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like someone drilled into my hip." She smiled. "That's accurate. Dr. Franco says the harvest went perfectly. Your son will receive the transplant this afternoon." Gregory closed his eyes. "Thank you. You're a good father," Lindsay said quietly. "Not many men would do this." If only she knew. They kept him overnight for observation. Gregory drifted in and out of medicated sleep, dreaming of Jake. In the morning, Lindsay came to discharge him. She had his chart, was updating his information when suddenly she stopped. Her eyes widened as she stared at her computer screen. "Mr. Cheney?" Her voice had changed, become uncertain. "Yes. I need you wait here. Don't leave." "What's wrong?" She didn't answer, just walked quickly out of the room. Gregory's heart began to race. Had something happened to Jake? Was the transplant failing? Lindsay returned minutes later with Dr. Franco and 2 security guards. Dr. Franco's face was grave. "Mr. Cheney, can you confirm your full legal name and date of birth?" "Gregory Michael Cheney. March 15th, 1985. "What's going on?" Dr. Franco glanced at the security guards. "When we ran your blood work, it automatically entered into several databases. Your DNA was flagged." "Flagged for what?" "For a criminal investigation that's been ongoing for 15 years. Gregory's blood went cold. 15 years ago, he'd been 21, a college student, nowhere near any criminal activity. Unless— "Sir, please don't leave until they arrive," Lindsay said, her voice gentle but firm. "Until who arrives?" Instead of answering, Dr. Franco turned her monitor toward him. On the screen was an FBI database entry with his photo, younger, clean-shaven, but unmistakably him. The file was marked Missing Witness/Victim, Howard Pharmaceutical Fraud and Conspiracy. Gregory stared at the screen in disbelief. "I don't understand." "The FBI has been looking for you since 2010, Dr. Franco said. "You were reported missing after testifying to federal investigators about pharmaceutical fraud. They lost track of you after you left Sacramento 6 years ago. But he never testified to federal investigators. He'd gone to local police, and they'd buried his complaint. He'd never spoken to the FBI at all." "There's been a mistake," Gregory said. "I never testified to anyone federal. According to this file, you did. 3 months before your custody trial." Dr. Franco's eyes were sympathetic. "The FBI agent in charge has been copied on this alert. She's on her way now." The pieces began to click into place in Gregory's mind. 15 years ago, he'd been dating Sonia before they were married. He'd noticed irregularities in Victor's business even then, had casually mentioned them to a friend who worked in regulatory compliance. Had that friend reported it? Had it triggered an investigation Gregory never knew about? And had Victor found out somehow? Had that been why Victor had been so threatened? Why he'd gone to such lengths to destroy Gregory's credibility and take Jake away? Not just because Gregory was a nuisance, but because he was potentially a federal witness? 20 minutes later, 2 FBI agents walked into the room. The lead agent was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. Her badge identified her as Special Agent Geneva Benson. "Mr. Cheney," she said, extending her hand. "We've been looking for you for a very long time." Gregory shook her hand, his mind reeling. "I think you'd better tell me exactly what's going on." Agent Benson pulled up a chair, her partner, Agent Arnoldman, standing by the door. "In 2010, you were dating Sonia Howard, daughter of Victor Howard. You attended a dinner at the Howard residence where you overheard a conversation between Victor and several associates. Do you remember this? Gregory nodded slowly. Vaguely. It was early in our relationship. You mentioned what you heard to a friend, Daniel Prince, who worked for the California Board of Pharmacy. Mr. Prince reported it to federal authorities. We opened an investigation into Howard Industries for pharmaceutical fraud, distributing counterfeit medications, and racketeering. I never knew that. We kept it quiet. But we needed witnesses, and Mr. Prince gave us your name. In March 2010, an agent named Harold Tucker attempted to contact you for an interview. According to his notes, you agreed to meet, but you never showed up. We tried to locate you multiple times over the next several months, but you'd become unreachable. Gregory searched his memory. March 2010, he'd been 21, finishing his last year of college. Had someone try to contact him? He vaguely remembered a voicemail from a blocked number, asking him to call regarding a legal matter. He'd assumed it was spam and deleted it. I never got any message I recognized as FBI, Gregory said. If I had, I would have called back. We believe you, Agent Benson said, because by the time we tried to contact you in person, Victor Howard had already gotten to you. Or rather, he decided you were a threat and begun building a case to discredit you. The custody battle, the fake domestic violence charges, the disappearing evidence. It hadn't just been about Gregory threatening to expose Victor. It had been about Victor protecting himself from federal prosecution. The investigation stalled without your testimony, Agent Benson continued. We had circumstantial evidence, but Howard's lawyers were too good. The case was suspended in 2012, but we never closed it. We've been looking for you ever since, hoping you could provide the testimony we needed. Why didn't you find me? I've been in Portland for 6 years. I have a job, an apartment. I file taxes under my real name. Victor Howard is very good at making people disappear, Agent Benson said grimly. He has connections in law enforcement, technology, finance. We suspect he's been monitoring any attempts to locate you. But DNA doesn't lie. When your bone marrow donation entered the hospital system, it triggered every flag we'd set up. Gregory leaned back against the hospital bed, his hips still aching from the procedure. So what happens now? Now, you tell us everything you know, and we finally bring Victor Howard to justice. A slow, cold smile spread across Gregory's face. For 6 years, he'd lived with the knowledge that Victor had stolen his son and gotten away with it. He'd accepted that some injustices couldn't be corrected, that powerful men like Victor Howard were untouchable. But he'd been wrong. I'll tell you everything, Gregory said, but I want something in return. Agent Benson raised an eyebrow. We're not in the habit of negotiating with witnesses. I want my son back. Full custody, visitation, rights restored, everything Townsend took from me. Because he was on Victor's payroll, wasn't he? The judge who ruled against me. Agent Benson and Mann exchanged glances. Judge Townsend has been under investigation for judicial corruption for 3 years, Mann said. We've connected him to several of Howard's associates, but we haven't been able to prove direct bribery. I can help you prove it, Gregory said. Victor told me himself the day of the verdict. He said that's what happens when you threaten his family. He was bragging about paying off the judge. I remember every word. Agent Benson leaned forward. That's valuable testimony. But we can't promise custody arrangements. That's a family court matter. But you can help me prove the original custody ruling was fraudulent, based on fabricated evidence and a corrupt judge. You can help me clear my name so I can get my son back legally. Yes, Agent Benson said slowly. We could do that. Then we have a deal. Gregory sat up straighter, ignoring the pain. When do we start? They spent the next 4 hours in that hospital room, Gregory recounting everything he remembered. The dinner where he'd overheard Victor's conversation about inventory discrepancies. The counterfeit medication that had poisoned Jake. His attempt to report Victor to local police and how that complaint had vanished. The custody battle, Sonia's false accusations, Judge Townsend's obvious bias. Victor's threat in the courthouse hallway. Agent Benson recorded everything, taking detailed notes. This corroborates what we've gathered from other sources, she said. Howard Industries has been distributing counterfeit pharmaceuticals for over 20 years. They import cheap, substandard medications from overseas manufacturers, repackage them to look legitimate, and sell them at full price to hospitals and pharmacies. The profit margin is enormous, and the damage is incalculable. People have died from these fake medications, Mr. Cheney. Gregory thought of Jake, convulsing from poison medicine. I know. Victor Howard isn't just a white-collar criminal. He's a mass murderer who happens to wear a suit. What about Sonia? Gregory asked quietly. My ex-wife. Is she involved? We don't believe so, Agent Benson said. She appears to be a victim of her father's manipulation, like you. But we'll need to interview her as part of the investigation. And Jake, my son, he's an innocent child. This won't affect him beyond the disruption of seeing his grandfather arrested and prosecuted. Gregory absorbed this. Jake would learn his grandfather was a monster. He'd learn his father had been telling the truth all along. It would be traumatic, confusing, painful, but it was also the only path to the truth. There's one more thing, Agent Man said. Victor Howard has powerful friends. When we move against him, he'll use every resource at his disposal to fight back. It could get dangerous. For all of us. I'm not afraid of him, Gregory said. You should be, Agent Benson said. We've documented at least 3 suspicious deaths connected to Howard's organization. People who knew too much, who threatened to testify. We can offer you protection, but... No, Gregory interrupted. No protection, no hiding. I'm done running from this man. I'm going to stand in court and watch him go to prison for what he did to my son. And then I'm going to get Jake back. Agent Benson studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but you need to be smart about this. Howard doesn't know we've made contact yet. We can use that to our advantage. What do you mean? Stay in Sacramento for a few days. Recover from the procedure. Visit your son if you can. Act like everything's normal. Meanwhile, we'll be building our case, securing warrants, coordinating with the U.S. Attorney's Office. When we're ready to move, we'll move fast. How long? A week, maybe 2. Can you manage that? Gregory thought about facing Victor again, pretending not to know that his world was about to end. It would require acting, restraint, patience. But Gregory had been patient for 6 years. He could manage 2 more weeks. I can manage. Agent Benson stood. We'll be in touch. Don't try to contact us. Your phone might be monitored. We'll reach out when it's time. She handed him a card with a number written on it. If there's an emergency, call this number from a payphone. Ask for Geneva. Don't use your real name. After the agents left, Gregory sat alone in the hospital room, processing everything. 15 years. The FBI had been investigating Victor for 15 years, and Gregory had been an unwitting part of that investigation the entire time. His life had been destroyed because Victor feared Gregory would testify, even though Gregory hadn't known there was anything to testify about. All the pain, the loss, the exile, it had been for nothing. Victor had won a battle Gregory didn't even know they were fighting. But now Gregory knew. Now he had allies, evidence the full weight of the federal government behind him. And most importantly, now he had a purpose beyond simple survival. He was going to destroy Victor Howard. Dr. Franco returned to check on him one last time before his discharge. The transplant went well, she said. Your son's body is accepting the bone marrow. The next 48 hours are critical, but I'm optimistic. Can I see him? Just for a minute. Dr. Franco hesitated. Mrs. Howard has been very clear. I saved his life, Gregory said quietly. I flew across the country, donated my bone marrow, and saved my son's life. I'm not asking to take him home. I just want to see him, to know he's okay. Something in his voice must have moved her, because Dr. Franco sighed. Room 412. 5 minutes. If anyone asks, you got lost looking for the bathroom. Thank you. Room 412 was in the pediatric oncology wing. Gregory walked slowly down the corridor, his hip throbbing, his heart in his throat. Through the window and the door, he could see Jake lying in bed, pale and thin, hooked up to monitors and IVs. But alive, breathing, fighting. Gregory pushed the door open quietly. Jake was asleep, his face peaceful despite the medical equipment. He'd grown so much, almost a teenager now, all the baby softness gone from his features. But Gregory could still see the boy he'd known, the son he'd lost. He stepped closer to the bed, careful not to wake him. Jake's medical chart hung on the wall, listing his condition, treatment plan, prognosis. Gregory read it all, absorbing every detail of his son's battle with leukemia. "You're going to be okay," Gregory whispered. "I promise." Jake stirred slightly but didn't wake. Gregory wanted to touch him, brush the hair from his forehead, hold his hand. But he'd already violated Sonia's restrictions just by being here. He couldn't risk more. "I'm gonna make this right," Gregory said softly. "Everything that was taken from us, everything that was stolen, I'm gonna get it back. And you're gonna know the truth about what happened. About who your father really is, and who your grandfather really is." He stood there for another minute, memorizing Jake's face, then forced himself to leave before anyone discovered him. Back in his hotel room, Gregory lay in bed and planned. Agent Benson had told him to act normal, to wait. But Gregory was done waiting. He'd spent 6 years in passive exile, accepting his fate. Now, he was going to be active, strategic, aggressive. Victor Howard thought he'd won. Thought Gregory was broken, neutered, no longer a threat. Victor's arrogance would be his downfall. Gregory pulled out his laptop and began researching. Howard Industries had a corporate headquarters in downtown Sacramento, a manufacturing facility in the industrial district, and distribution centers in 5 states. Victor lived in a gated mansion in the East Sacramento Hills, the same house where Gregory had once attended family dinners. He researched Judge Townsend next. The judge was 72 now, still on the bench, still ruling on custody cases and destroying families. How many other fathers had lost their children because Townsend sold his verdicts to the highest bidder? Then he researched Sonia. She was still living in the old house, Gregory's house, the one he'd made payments on until the court stripped it from him. She'd never remarried, devoted herself to raising Jake and working for a nonprofit that helped children with chronic illnesses. The irony was bitter. Sonia championing sick children while her own father distributed the medications that made them sick. Gregory made notes, drew connections, built a mental map of Victor's empire and everyone connected to it. If the FBI was going to take Victor down, Gregory wanted to ensure the fall was total and complete. No escape routes, no plea deals, no reduced sentences. Victor Howard needed to pay for everything he'd done, not just to Gregory, but to every person who'd suffered because of his counterfeit pharmaceuticals. 2 days passed. Gregory stayed in Sacramento, recovering from the bone marrow donation, watching the hospital from a coffee shop across the street. He saw Sonia arrive each morning, saw Victor's car pull up in the afternoons. Alma came and went, always looking exhausted and worried. On the 3rd day, Gregory's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. It's Geneva. Can you talk?" "Yes. We're moving faster than expected. The U.S. attorney loves your testimony and wants to expedite the indictment. We're executing search warrants on Howard Industries tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Can you be at the federal building downtown by 5? We may need you to identify documents or provide context." "I'll be there." "Good. One more thing. We're also arresting Judge Townsend. The corruption charges are solid. Your testimony about what Howard said to you in the courthouse is key evidence." Gregory felt something like vindication surge through him. Tomorrow morning, Agent Benson confirmed. "This stays between us. Don't tell anyone, don't post anything online, don't change your routine. Howard has ears everywhere." "Understood." After she hung up, Gregory sat in the coffee shop and watched Victor's Mercedes pull into the hospital parking garage. In less than 24 hours, that arrogant smile would be gone. That sense of invulnerability would shatter. Victor would feel what Gregory had felt 6 years ago. The horror of losing everything, the humiliation of being exposed, the powerlessness of facing a system stacked against him. Except Victor's suffering would be earned. Justified. True. Gregory ordered another coffee and opened his laptop. He drafted an email to Jake, scheduled to send 1 week from today. In it, he explained everything. Who he really was, what had happened, why he'd been absent from Jake's life. He explained that he'd never stopped loving Jake, never stopped fighting for him, never stopped being his father even when the law said otherwise. He explained that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who hurt us most. That truth matters more than comfort. That justice, when it finally comes, is worth waiting for. He ended the email with, "I'm so proud of you for being strong enough to survive this disease. Now be strong enough to survive the truth. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm coming home." Gregory scheduled the email, closed his laptop, and finished his coffee. Tomorrow morning, Victor Howard's empire would begin to crumble, and Gregory Chaney would finally get his son back. At 4:45 a.m., Gregory arrived at the federal building downtown. Agent Benson met him in the lobby, flanked by a dozen agents in FBI tactical gear. The building hummed with controlled energy, people moving with purpose, radios crackling, final preparations being made. "You ready for this?" Agent Benson asked. "I've been ready for 6 years." She led him to a command center on the 3rd floor, where agents monitored multiple screens showing live feed from surveillance teams positioned around Howard Industries and Victor's residence. Other feeds showed Judge Townsend's house, the homes of several Howard Industries executives, and warehouse locations across the state. "This is a coordinated operation," Agent Benson explained. "At 6 a.m., we hit Howard Industries headquarters with search warrants. Simultaneously, we execute warrants at the distribution centers, manufacturing facility, and financial offices. We'll also arrest Victor Howard, Judge Townsend, and 4 executives we've identified as co-conspirators." "What about evidence?" Gregory asked. "We've been building this case for 15 years. We have financial records showing Howard's offshore accounts, testimony from former employees, intercepted communications, analysis of the counterfeit medications. Your testimony ties it all together. It proves Howard knew about the fraud and actively silenced witnesses." On the screens, Gregory watched agents taking positions around Howard Industries. The building was a sleek glass tower in downtown Sacramento, Victor's name etched above the entrance. Inside that building, lives had been destroyed for profit. Children had been poisoned. Families had been devastated. Not anymore. At exactly 6 a.m., the agents moved. On screen, Gregory watched them pour into Howard Industries like a flood, showing warrants to the bewildered security guards, sealing exits, securing computer systems. Other teams did the same at the distribution centers and manufacturing facilities. A separate screen showed Victor's mansion. 2 agents knocked on the door while others surrounded the property. An older woman, the housekeeper, answered. The agents showed her their warrant and pushed past. "Target acquired," a voice crackled over the radio. Victor Howard in custody. Gregory felt a surge of satisfaction, so intense it was almost painful. Victor in handcuffs. Victor surrounded by federal agents. Victor powerless for the first time in his life. Judge Townsend is in custody as well, another agent reported. He tried to flee out the back door. Agent Benson glanced at Gregory. "How does it feel?" "Like breathing again," Gregory said. The raids continued for hours. Agents boxed up documents, seized computers, arrested employees who tried to destroy evidence. By noon, the FBI had executed warrants at 17 locations and arrested 11 people connected to Howard Industries. Gregory watched it all from the command center, occasionally identifying documents or providing context when agents had questions. He saw Victor being led out of his mansion in handcuffs, still in his pajamas, his face red with fury. He saw Judge Townsend trying to maintain dignity while being loaded into a federal van. He saw Howard Industries executives being perp-walked through their own parking lots while news cameras recorded everything. The story broke on local news first, then went national. Pharmaceutical magnate arrested in massive fraud scheme. Federal agents raid Howard Industries in multi-state operation. Judge accused of taking bribes in custody cases. Gregory's phone rang. It was Alma Clark, Sonia's mother. Her voice panicked. "Greg, what's happening?" "The FBI just arrested Victor. They're at the house, searching everything." Sonia is hysterical. "She doesn't understand." "She will," Gregory said calmly. "The truth is coming out, Alma. All of it. Victor's been running a criminal enterprise for 20 years, and it's finally caught up with him." But Sonia said you tried to tell people years ago, and they said you were lying. I wasn't lying. Victor paid people to say I was lying. He paid the judge who took Jake from me. He fabricated evidence, destroyed my reputation, and stole my son. And now he's going to prison. Silence on the other end. Then Alma said quietly, "Oh my God, it was all true." Yes. Sonia didn't know. She believed her father. She thought. I know what she thought, Gregory said, not unkindly. Victor manipulated all of you. But that's over now. What happens to Jake? Jake gets better. The transplant is working. And when he's strong enough, I'm going to petition the court for custody. The original ruling was fraudulent, based on lies and a corrupt judge. I'm going to get my son back. Alma began to cry. I'm sorry, Greg. I'm so sorry we believed Victor. We should have listened to you. You couldn't have known, Gregory said. Though part of him wanted to rage at her, at all of them, for their willingness to believe Victor's lies. Just take care of Jake. Make sure he understands none of this is his fault. I will. I promise. After she hung up, Agent Benson approached with an update. Victor Howard is being held without bail. The U.S. attorney has charged him with racketeering, fraud, conspiracy, and manslaughter. We're attributing 15 deaths to medications distributed by his company. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at life in prison. And Townsend? Judicial corruption, bribery, obstruction of justice. He'll likely get 20 years. His law license is already suspended. What about my custody case? The family court judge handling your petition has been briefed on the situation. Given Judge Townsend's arrest and the evidence that your original trial was corrupted, he's inclined to vacate the previous ruling and grant you an emergency custody hearing. As soon as your son is medically cleared to leave the hospital. Probably 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Gregory could wait 2 more weeks. He'd waited 6 years. 2 weeks was nothing. The legal proceedings moved quickly after that. Victor Howard arraignment was a circus. Reporters packed the courtroom. Cameras lined the hallway. Protesters gathered outside. Gregory watched from the gallery as Victor was led and wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hand shackled. Their eyes met across the courtroom, and Gregory saw something he'd never seen before in Victor's face: fear. The judge denied bail, citing flight risk and the severity of the charges. Victor's attorney, a famous defense lawyer from Los Angeles, argued vehemently, but the evidence was overwhelming. Victor would await trial in federal detention. As Victor was let out, he turned and looked at Gregory one last time. No more arrogance. No more smug superiority. Just the hollow-eyed stare of a man who'd lost everything. Gregory didn't smile, didn't gloat, just watched as the man who destroyed his life was taken away to his cell. Judge Townsend's arraignment was similar, though with less media fanfare. The retired judge looked frail and terrified, reality finally penetrating his corrupt worldview. When the judge denied him bail as well, Townsend began to cry. Gregory felt nothing watching him. Townsend had stolen 6 years of Gregory's relationship with his son. He'd rubber-stamped Victor's lies and called it justice. Whatever suffering Townsend experienced now was earned 1,000 times over. 10 days after the arrests, Dr. Franco called. Jake's doing remarkably well. The transplant was successful. His body has fully accepted the bone marrow. We'll discharge him tomorrow. Can I see him? Actually, yes. Sonia has requested that you come to the hospital. She wants to talk. Gregory's chest tightened. He hadn't seen Sonia since the custody trial 6 years ago. What would she say? Would she apologize? Blame him? Defend her father? He arrived at the hospital that afternoon, wearing his best clothes, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. Dr. Franco met him at the entrance and led him to a private consultation room. Sonia was already there, sitting at a table, her hands folded in front of her. She looked older, not just 6 years older, but worn down, exhausted. Her auburn hair was streaked with gray. Lines creased her face that hadn't been there before. She stood when Gregory entered. They stared at each other for a long moment. "Hi, Greg," she said finally. "Sonia." She stopped, started again. "I don't even know where to begin." "Your father's in jail," Gregory said. "Seems like a good place." She flinched. "I didn't know about any of it. I swear to God, I didn't know." You believed I was abusive, that I'd hurt you, that I was dangerous to our son. My father told me you were trying to destroy our family. He showed me evidence, emails, testimony from people who said you'd been violent. He convinced me you were having a breakdown, that you needed help but refused to get it. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought I was protecting Jake. By taking him from his father? By letting a corrupt judge destroy our family. I didn't know the judge was corrupt. Sonia's voice rose. I didn't know my father was paying him off. I didn't know about the counterfeit medications, or the deaths, or any of it. I thought my father was a successful businessman who'd built something legitimate. I thought you were paranoid and jealous and dangerous. Gregory wanted to believe her. Part of him did. But part of him remembered how easily she'd testified against him, how thoroughly she'd destroyed him in that courtroom. You bruised yourself, he said quietly. You split your own lip. For the photos. Sonia closed her eyes. He told me it was the only way to protect Jake. That you were going to take him away, disappear with him, and I'd never see him again. He said the courts wouldn't believe me without evidence. She touched her cheek, remembering. I hurt myself, and I let him photograph it, and I lied under oath. You destroyed my life. I know. She was crying now. I know, and I'm so sorry. I was 28 years old, terrified, completely under my father's control. He'd been manipulating me my entire life, and I didn't even realize it. I thought I was doing the right thing. Gregory sat down heavily. His hips still ached from the bone marrow donation. He was tired of anger, tired of bitterness, tired of carrying this weight. What happens now, he asked. Now you decide what you want. The judge has agreed to vacate the custody ruling. You can petition for full custody, joint custody, supervised visitation, whatever you think is best for Jake. What do you want? Sonia wiped her eyes. I want Jake to know his father. I want him to know the truth, that I was wrong, that I hurt someone I should have protected, that I let my father poison our family. And she took a shaky breath. I want you to forgive me someday. Not now, maybe not for years, but someday. Gregory studied her. She looked broken, remorseful, genuine. But she'd looked genuine in that courtroom 6 years ago too, while lying under oath. I need to think about it, he said. About what's best for Jake. Of course. Take all the time you need. She stood. He wants to meet you, by the way. Jake. He's been asking about you ever since the FBI told us you were the one who donated your bone marrow. Gregory's heart clenched. He remembers me. He never forgot you. I told him. She swallowed. I told him terrible things about you. That you'd abandoned us. That you didn't love him. That you were dangerous. But he never really believed it. He always asked about you. Wanted to see photos. Wanted to know why you left. I didn't leave. I was forced out. I know that now. And so does he. Can I see him? Yes. He's in his room, waiting. They walked together to room 412, the same room where Gregory had secretly visited Jake 10 days ago. This time, Jake was awake, sitting up in bed, looking thin and pale but alert. When Gregory walked in, Jake's eyes widened. Dad! The word hit Gregory like a physical blow. 6 years, and his son still called him Dad. Hey, buddy. Gregory managed, his voice thick. Mom said you saved my life. You gave me your bone marrow. Of course I did. You're my son. Jake's eyes filled with tears. I thought you didn't want me anymore. Grandpa said you left because you didn't want to be my dad. Gregory crossed the room and sat on the edge of Jake's bed. That's not true. I was forced to leave. But I never, ever stopped wanting to be your dad. I thought about you every single day. Really. I sent you birthday cards, even though I didn't know if you got them. I put money in a bank account for you. He had to stop, emotion choking him. I never stopped loving you, Jake. Not for 1 second. Jake launched himself forward, wrapping his thin arms around Gregory's neck. Gregory held him carefully, mindful of the 4-line and monitors, and felt 6 years of grief and loss break open inside him. I love you, Dad, Jake whispered. I love you too, buddy. So much. They held each other while Sonia watched from the doorway, crying. Gregory didn't acknowledge her. This moment was for him and Jake, reconnecting after all the stolen years. When Jake finally pulled back, he wiped his eyes. Mom told me what Grandpa did, that he lied about you and paid the judge and everything. Yeah, I can't believe he'd do that. I can't believe he'd hurt you and hurt Mom and hurt our whole family just to what? Protect himself? Some people only care about themselves, Gregory said. And your grandfather is one of them. Jake nodded slowly, processing. Are you going to stay now? Are you going to be my dad again? I never stopped being your dad. But yes, I'm staying. I'm going to make sure we're never separated again. Good. Jake smiled, the first genuine smile Gregory had seen on his face. I missed you. I missed you too. They spent the next hour talking. Gregory catching up on 6 years of Jake's life. Jake asking questions about where Gregory had been and what he'd been doing. It was awkward sometimes, stilted in places where the relationship had atrophied, but it was real and honest and healing. When visiting hours ended, Gregory reluctantly left, promising to return the next day. In the hallway, Sonia caught up with him. Thank you, she said, for being kind to him, for not poisoning him against me the way I poisoned him against you. I won't lie to him, Gregory said, but I won't use him as a weapon either. He's been through enough. You're a better person than I am. Gregory didn't respond to that. Maybe it was true, maybe not. Either way, he had more important things to focus on now. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Gregory retained the best family lawyer in Sacramento, a woman named Carolyn Murray, who specialized in overturning unjust custody rulings. She reviewed the evidence from Gregory's original trial, the FBI's findings about Victor and Judge Townsend, and built an airtight case. This is one of the clearest cases of judicial corruption I've ever seen, Carolyn told him. The judge will have no choice but to vacate the original ruling and grant you full custody if you want it. What about Sonia? That's up to you. You could pursue full custody with no visitation for her, given her perjury in the original trial. Or you could propose joint custody, shared parenting time, supervised visits. What do you want? Gregory thought about it for days. He could punish Sonia, take Jake away from her the way she'd taken him away from Gregory. It would be justified, legal, fair. She'd lied under oath, destroyed his reputation, cost him 6 years with his son. But Jake loved his mother. Despite everything, despite her mistakes, she'd raised him. And she seemed genuinely remorseful, genuinely changed by her father's exposure. Joint custody, Gregory said finally. Equal time with both of us. With the stipulation that Victor Howard has no contact with Jake whatsoever, and that Sonia undergoes therapy to address her father's manipulation. Carolyn raised her eyebrows. That's generous, considering what she did to you. It's not about generosity. It's about what's best for Jake. He needs both his parents. He doesn't need more trauma. All right, I'll draw up the proposal. The custody hearing was held in a different courtroom with a different judge, Judge Gerardo Minor, who had a reputation for fairness and integrity. The proceedings were straightforward. Carolyn presented the FBI's findings about Judge Townsend's corruption, Victor's crimes, and the fraudulent nature of Gregory's original trial. Sonia's attorney didn't even contest it. Judge Minor reviewed the evidence for less than an hour before ruling. The original custody order is vacated due to judicial corruption and perjured testimony. Given that both parents appear committed to their child's well-being and that the child has expressed a desire to maintain relationships with both parents, I'm ordering joint legal and physical custody with equal parenting time. Just like that, Gregory had his son back. After the hearing, Gregory and Sonia stood outside the courthouse with Jake between them. It was awkward, uncertain, but also filled with possibility. Thank you, Sonia said quietly, for not taking him away from me. He's your son too, Gregory said. I won't pretend the last 6 years didn't happen, and I won't pretend I'm not angry. But Jake needs both of us. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Jake looked up at Gregory. Can we get pizza? I haven't had pizza in forever because of the hospital food. Gregory laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd had in years. Yeah, buddy, we can get pizza. They went to Jake's favorite restaurant, a small Italian place near the old house, and sat together like a fractured family, trying to figure out how to be whole again. It wasn't perfect. The conversation was sometimes strained. There were moments of tension when the past intruded on the present. But they were trying, and that was something. Victor Howard's trial began 3 months later. Gregory testified for 2 days, detailing everything he knew about Howard Industries fraud, Victor's threats, the corruption that had stolen his son. Other witnesses followed. Former employees who'd been pressured to stay silent, doctors who'd treated patients poisoned by counterfeit medications, federal agents who'd investigated the scheme for years. The evidence was overwhelming. Victor's defense team tried every trick they could think of, attacking witnesses' credibility, claiming Victor was ignorant of his company's activities, suggesting the fraud was perpetrated by rogue employees without his knowledge. But the paper trail was too clear, the testimony too consistent. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. At sentencing, the judge listened to victim impact statements from families who'd lost loved ones to Howard Industries' counterfeit medications. Parents who'd watched their children die from fake chemotherapy drugs. Elderly patients who'd suffered strokes from diluted blood thinners. A diabetic man who'd gone into a coma from bogus insulin. Gregory testified too, describing how Victor had nearly killed his own grandson with poison medication, then destroyed Gregory's life to cover it up. The judge sentenced Victor Howard to life in prison without possibility of parole. Gregory watched from the gallery as Victor was led away in chains. Their eyes met one final time. Victor's face was empty now. All the arrogance and cruelty drained away, leaving only a hollow shell of a man who'd sacrificed everything for greed and power. "It's over," Agent Benson said beside Gregory. She'd attended every day of the trial. "He'll die in prison." "Good," Gregory said simply. Judge Townsend's sentencing came a week later. He received 25 years for judicial corruption and bribery. At 72, it was effectively a life sentence. He'd stolen families, destroyed lives, perverted justice for money. Now he'd spend his remaining years in prison. Gregory didn't attend that sentencing. He'd already moved on. 6 months after the trial, Gregory stood in the backyard of a new house in Portland, watching Jake kick a soccer ball around. The house was bigger than Gregory's apartment had been. 3 bedrooms, a yard, space for Jake when he came to visit every other week. They'd fallen into a routine. Jake lived with Sonia in Sacramento during school, spent holidays and summers with Gregory in Portland. They talked every night via video call. It wasn't perfect. They were still rebuilding trust, still learning how to be father and son again. But it was real. Sonia had changed too. She completed therapy, started working for a pharmaceutical ethics organization that exposed fraud in the industry. She testified against her father at his trial, providing documents and information that helped secure his conviction. She'd chosen the truth over family loyalty, just as she should have done years ago. Gregory didn't love her anymore. That trust was too broken to repair. But he respected her attempt at redemption. They'd never be a family in the traditional sense, but they could be effective co-parents. "Dad," Jay called. "Come play." Gregory jogged over, still favoring his hips slightly, but otherwise recovered from the bone marrow donation. He and Jake kicked the ball back and forth, laughing, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. Later that evening, after Jake had gone to bed in his new room, Gregory sat on the back porch with a beer and thought about the past year. He'd lost 6 years with his son. He'd been betrayed, exiled, destroyed. But he'd survived. He'd rebuilt. And when the opportunity came for justice, he'd seized it with both hands. Victor Howard was in prison. Judge Townsend was in prison. Howard Industries had been dismantled, its assets seized to compensate victims. The counterfeit medication pipeline had been shut down permanently. And Gregory had his son back. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined 6 years ago, broken and alone in Portland. But it was a good ending, an earned ending, the kind of ending where the villains faced consequences and the hero got a second chance. Gregory's phone buzzed. A text from Agent Benson. "Wanted you to know, Howard tried to bribe a guard today, tried to arrange for someone to take care of you." Guard reported it immediately. Howard's in solitary now and facing additional charges. He never learns. Gregory smiled and typed back. "Some people never do. Thanks for keeping me updated." He deleted the text, finished his beer, and went inside. Tomorrow, Jake wanted to explore Portland, check out the museums and food trucks and Powell's books. They had a whole weekend together, and Gregory intended to make the most of every minute. Because he'd learned something in the past 6 years, something Victor Howard and Judge Townsend and everyone who betrayed him would never understand. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about restoration, about rebuilding what had been broken, about refusing to let corrupt men define your story. Gregory had been broken, but he wasn't broken anymore. He was home. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.